Good afternoon. The first item of business this afternoon is portfolio questions, and the portfolio on this occasion is social justice and housing. Question number 1, I call Marie McNair.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. To ask the Scottish Government what assessment is made of the impact of the UK Government's reported austerity policies on the Scottish social security budget.
Cabinet Secretary Shirley-Anne Somerville.
We are currently investing in the order of £150 million a year to mitigate the impacts of UK Government welfare reforms, and any further reforms emerging from the Timms review of PIP or wider changes aimed at reducing the UK benefit bill could reduce our block grant. The strategic concern is that their chaotic approach to reform means continuing uncertainty for our funding settlement. Our approach to managing this risk is outlined across the Fiscal Sustainability Delivery Plan and the Medium-Term Financial Strategy and reflected in the balanced annual budget propositions.
Marie McNair.
I thank the Cabinet Secretary for the answer. A few weeks ago, I sponsored an event in Parliament with Professor Jerry McCartney and Dr David Walsh from the University of Glasgow to present the findings of their book Social Murder, Austerity and Life Expectancy in the UK. It shows that the UK Government austerity policies are the main driver behind a declining life expectancy in the UK. The event heard that most of these austerity policies are still in place and in fact will be added to, with the health element of universal credit for sick and disabled people being cut by 50% next month. Does the Cabinet Secretary agree with me that these appalling findings should shame successive UK governments, and isn't it fundamentally clear that only with independence can we fully protect our constituents from harmful austerity?
Cabinet Secretary.
Well, I welcome the work by Professor McCartney and Dr Walsh on the adverse impacts of UK Government austerity on life expectancy. Their research reflects that reducing poverty and inequality is key to improving life expectancy. The changes to the UC element are one of a number of reductive policies that successive UK governments have inflicted upon the most vulnerable people in our society, and despite our repeated raising of these issues with the UK government, they do still persist with these harmful policies. And the member is quite correct to say that it's only with the full powers of independence that Scotland can realise its full potential.
Stephen Kerr.
This is all too predictable from SNP members and from the ministers, because let's look at the facts. There is no sustainable way to fund, I don't know what they're shouting human beings at, but they just want to hear it spout about independence. I want to talk about helping people get back into work, because there is currently no sustainable way to fund the ballooning costs of our benefits. £1.07 is spent by the SNP on welfare. By 2030, that will hit £10 billion, with 1 million Scots receiving benefits by that date. Shouldn't the Scottish Government have some ambition about helping our country get back to work, help people back into work, by planning to reduce the benefits bill and planning to help people get back to work?
Cabinet Secretary.
Well, the Scottish Government does very much encourage people to get back to work, and that's one of the reasons why we have a lower unemployment rate in Scotland than the rest of the UK, Presiding Officer. But at the same time as doing that, I think my colleagues were shouting human beings, because we need to remember that these payments go to individuals who are often some of the most vulnerable in our society. And I think it's important to have the context in this. The proportion of the Scottish Government resource budget needed over and above the funding received from the UK Government through the block grant adjustment to meet the Fiscal Commission's forecast will be around 1.7% each year from 2026 to 27 to 2029-30. That's an investment in the people of Scotland, Presiding Officer, that I am proud that this Government makes.
Question 2, Tess White.
To ask the Scottish Government what discussions the Social Justice Secretary has had with ministerial colleagues regarding the protection of people's human rights in relation to new renewable energy infrastructure, including the proposed SSEN transmission 400 kV overhead power line in the North East Scotland region.
Minister Colcab-Stewart.
Thank you. Regarding the specific proposal the member raises, I am unable to comment on live applications. I met with the Cabinet Secretary for Net Zero and Energy in June last year to discuss areas of her portfolio where different groups experience particularly impacts in relation to net zero, climate justice and just transition. The member can be assured that we will continue to engage on and consider these matters carefully. Regarding new infrastructure, it is important to note that Scotland's 4th National Planning Framework, the NPF4, ensures that the potential impacts of proposals on communities and nature are important considerations in the decision-making process. Matters relating to electricity networks, including legislation and regulation, are of course reserved to the UK Government, with strategic planning undertaken by the National Energy System Operator. The Scottish Government has no role beyond its statutory planning and consenting functions.
Tess White.
Presiding Officer, human beings matter, and my question does relate to the Scottish Government and their powers. Can the Minister confirm that the proposed infrastructure will conform to all statutory and regulatory requirements, and consent will not be granted unless the Scottish Government is satisfied that the design properly reflects foreseeable land use and lawful land use, and does not endanger the lives of agricultural workers regarding the serious safety concerns flagged to Ofgem on minimum statutory clearances / SAG heights?
Minister.
Presiding Officer, as I've already said, I cannot comment on live applications.
Question 3, Annabel Ewing.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. To ask the Scottish Government whether it anticipates the establishment of More Homes Scotland will lead to additional social housing being built in Fife, in light of reports of long waiting lists in the region.
Cabinet Secretary Mary McCallum.
Presiding Officer, More Homes Scotland will bring together housing, land and planning support, together with delivery expertise, to simplify, scale and speed up the delivery of homes across Scotland, including in Fife. A design phase is underway, and I will update the Parliament this month on the detail. Our record £926 million budget for the coming financial year and our commitment for the first time to multi-year funding certainty will provide confidence in the sector. So too does the £39 million we've provided to Fife this year to acquire properties immediately, helping to reduce the use of temporary accommodation.
Annabel Ewing.
I thank the Cabinet Secretary for her reply. I would imagine that we are all agreed that the laser focus of More Homes Scotland must be on delivery. And in that regard, I would ask the Cabinet Secretary what consideration will be given to making Fife the first test case area for the new body, both in terms of funding and in terms of the location of social housing, in order to tackle the chronic shortage of decent homes for people to live in the Kingdom.
Cabinet Secretary.
Presiding Officer, I welcome Ms Ewing's question and her suggestion in respect of test cases. And the whole point of the design phase that we're undertaking just now is drawing on already good practice, but equally challenging ourselves and the housing industry across Scotland to identify ways to simplify, scale up and speed up. The agency will be for all of Scotland, but my officials and I continue to work closely with all councils, including with Fife, to tackle the housing emergency. And I would reiterate that their expertise is helpful. So too is the very strong investment that we've made in Fife of around £153 million for affordable homes over the first 4 years of this parliamentary period.
Question 4, Jackie Dunbar.
Apologies, Presiding Officer. To ask the Scottish Government whether it will provide an update on the Child Poverty Practice Accelerator Fund and how it is supporting families in Scotland with the cost of living.
Cabinet Secretary Shirley Ann Summerall.
I was delighted to announce 2 weeks ago round 3 of the Child Poverty Practice Accelerator Fund, which supports the national mission to eradicate child poverty. We will make almost £1.9 million available over the next 2 years to enable projects to test innovative ways to support this mission. This builds on the fund's first 2 rounds, supporting a range of work, including improving uptake of income maximisation support. Local authorities and health boards are already undertaking transformative work to tackle poverty, and this fund supports them to do just that.
Jackie Dunbar.
I thank the Cabinet Secretary for her answer. While the Labour Government continues to sit on its hands, it's encouraging to hear about the bold action this SNP Government is taking to tackle child poverty and help families with the cost of living. Does the Cabinet Secretary agree that if the UK Government is serious about tackling these issues, it must listen to the Child Poverty Action Group and finally scrap the benefit cap?
Cabinet Secretary.
I would very much agree with Jackie Dunbar, and that's because analysis from the Policy and Practice finds that as a result of the benefit cap, across the UK, 1 in 10 children hit by the 2-child limit wouldn't benefit from it being abolished, and a further 1 in 10 will only benefit partially. Keeping the benefit cap has been a conscious choice by the UK Labour government, and it is a disappointing one, to say the least. In the coming year, the Scottish Government will invest £15.5 million to help mitigate the impact of the benefit cap, but I would urge the UK Government to scrap it at source as soon as possible.
Claire Baker.
Thank you. Can I ask the Cabinet Secretary if she can clarify how many families in Scotland are impacted with the benefits cap? One of the main drivers is high rents, and most of the people affected by this are concentrated in the south of England.
Cabinet Secretary.
Well, one of the issues which particularly impacts people with high rents is the freezing of the local housing allowance by the UK Government, and that's another area where the Scottish Government is having to do the UK Government's job for it and to actually support people to keep them in their homes, alongside the mitigation of the bedroom tax, which again the UK Labour Government have decided to keep.
And question 5, Gillian Mackay.
To ask the Scottish Government how it's ensuring that newly built housing is adaptable for future needs.
Cabinet Secretary Mary McCallum.
Scottish building standards already include provision that support accessibility in new homes and enable future adaptations as occupants' needs evolve. These provisions help create inclusive, flexible environments and reduce the need for later alterations. By way of example, the standards already require a designated future shower space on the main living level, space to allow installation of a stair lift and guidance on robust wall construction to support adaptations such as grab rails. But I committed during the passage of the Housing Scotland Act to advancing both accessibility and adaptability across all tenures through a Scottish Accessible Home Standard, and to do that within the next 2 years.
Gillian Mackay.
I thank the Cabinet Secretary for that answer. There have been instances in my region where disabled people have had to wait for lengthy periods for housing which meets their needs. None of us know when we might need accessible housing, and with an ageing population, it seems sensible to invest in this type of housing stock. For the current stock that is in local authority control, what action can the Scottish Government take to help support local authorities to adapt current housing to ensure that these long delays that we're seeing for housing to be allocated can be shortened?
Cabinet Secretary.
I would thank Gillian Mackay for her question and agree that this is a matter that takes a lot of my time as Housing Secretary, but equally as an MSP, it's something that constituents are frequently in touch with me about. But look, I'm determined that whether it's the design of new build homes, that they should be accessible and adaptable, and that our standards should drive that to the greatest extent possible. But equally, I'm conscious that most people will grow old in the house that they're already in, and therefore the adaptation system being as person-centred and speedy as it needs to be is a concern of mine. That's why we're updating the standards for new builds, and why I've also committed to review the adaptations programme across the board to drive those improvements.
Supplementary, Marie McNair.
Thank you. I welcome that the recently passed Scottish Budget 2026-27 invests in Scotland's housing sector. Can the Cabinet Secretary speak more to the Scottish Government's plans to build our future by maximising growth and investment?
Cabinet Secretary.
Presiding Officer, Marie McNair is absolutely right. The Government has put a great deal of emphasis on driving more delivery of homes in the coming years, driving simplicity, driving scale and driving speed. That will be done via the record £4.9 billion of investment that we have committed to in the coming 4 years, coupled with the certainty that we have offered. That's intended to deliver at least 36,000 affordable homes across Scotland and support our all-tenure ambition by building the strength of the housing sector generally. And of course, all of that, Presiding Officer, will be aided by the development of More Homes Scotland.
Okay, question 6, Claire Baker.
Thank you. To ask the Scottish Government will it provide an update on any recent discussions it's had with Fife Council regarding a solution for households in West Wemyss and Denbeath that were issued with eviction notices following the sale of their tenanted properties by Wemyss Estate to Tora Capital last year?
Cabinet Secretary Mary McCallum.
Presiding Officer, I understand this is an incredibly difficult and worrying time for those affected, and I am concerned about the significant impact that could be arising for them and their community. I am being updated by officers from Fife Council, and I met with them and the council leader on the 11th of February. I also met with David Torrance MSP, the constituency MSP, on 29th of January. I've committed to Fife Council that I will remain engaged with them as they support the tenants affected, as they consider what options might be available, and they intend to report to me with those options.
Claire Baker.
I thank the Cabinet Secretary for that response. In 2007, Weems Estate disposed of properties in Colton of Weems, and after a focused campaign, along with support from the Scottish Government, the properties were eventually sold to Kingdom Housing Association, resulting in continued tenancies. Does the Cabinet Secretary share my disappointment that this option was not pursued on this occasion, and instead properties were sold to the private company Tora Capital, who have subsequently issued eviction notices? And is at this stage the Cabinet Secretary able to give any indication of whether financial support would be available for Fife Council or a housing association if it is needed to facilitate a purchase of these properties?
Cabinet Secretary.
Presiding Officer, the situation that has emerged and the background of it, I think, are regrettable. And my heart goes out to the tenants who are affected by it. And I understand that many of them have been in that area for a very long time, and it's a very close-knit community. And none of us would want to see that disrupted. That's why I have sought, from the moment this arose, updates from Fife Council officers who I believe are considering the options very carefully, and I have committed to them that they can come to me with options to be considered, and I will consider each of them and what the Scottish Government might be able to do to support.
A supplementary, David Torrance.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. I'm sure we will all share deep concern regarding the ongoing situation in West Weems and Denbeef. Can the Cabinet Secretary advise what engagement she has had and her officials have had with Fife Council to offer support and monitor any further developments? Cabinet Secretary.
Presiding Officer, I thank David Torrance for his question and also for the time he and his office took to meet with me and to explain some of the background and the options as he saw them. As I said to Claire Baker, I am in discussions with Fife Council. I'm aware that they are actively considering options such as acquisition to support the tenants affected. They have committed to keep me updated on any developments, and our respective officials continue to engage.
Thank you. Question 7 has been withdrawn. Question 8, Paul Sweeney, who joins us remotely.
Thank you, Deputy Presiding Officer. To ask the Scottish Government how it plans to support registered social landlords with the costs of retrofitting the building fabric of social homes to make them energy efficient and fit for the future.
Cabinet Secretary Mary McCallum.
The Scottish Government recognises the importance of improving the energy efficiency of social homes to tackle the twin challenges of environmental degradation and fuel poverty. Since 2021, we have provided almost £90 million of funding to social housing providers via the Social Housing Net Zero Fund, which has supported the installation of clean heat and energy efficiency measures to over 13,000 homes. In our budget for the coming financial year, we committed to continuing existing capital programmes for the retrofit of social homes, and I confirm that the Social Housing Net Zero Heat Fund will open to applications shortly.
Paul Sweeney.
Thank you. Community-based housing associations in Scotland are leading the way when it comes to retrofitting Scotland's ageing tenement stock. Reedvale Housing Association, of which I am very proud to be a board member, has been leading the charge in retrofitting and making fit for the future Glasgow's historic sandstone tenements through the extensive renovation of a building at Belfield Street in Denniston, thanks to securing a £1.2 million grant via the Glasgow Local Voids programme, which was funded by the Scottish Government Housing Investment Budget. I think this is a good news story that everyone can celebrate, but with 70,000 pre-1919 tenements in Glasgow, there's a huge scale of work to be done. So will the Minister agree that this development shows the power that social landlords can have in improving their housing stock, but what commitment will the Government make to build on this momentum driven by Reedvale and other community-based housing associations?
Cabinet Secretary.
I thank Paul Sweeney for his question, and like him I would want to acknowledge and thank housing associations for the work that they are doing on retrofit. I don't for a moment underestimate what a significant task it is, given the costs associated with it, but also given the disparity in tenure and housing types that we're dealing with across Scotland. And all of that, of course, on the backdrop of some 30% of people in Scotland living in fuel poverty and very volatile electricity prices. So it's a complex picture. Our registered social landlords are working very closely with with the Government on this task. I mentioned the £90 million of funding we've provided so far and the 13,000 homes that have benefited, and that this fund will very shortly be opening to continue that work.
Thank you, Cabinet Secretary. That concludes portfolio questions on social justice and housing. There will be a brief pause before we move to the next item of business to allow front benches to change.